Brothers and sisters, I want to talk to you a little bit today about the symbolism of the second reading of today. I promised I'd come back to Revelation today. We hear about the gates. We hear about this holy city. We hear about all these different things. What do they mean? Okay, we're going to come back to that here in a moment, but first, a little bit on the first reading. You know, when you think about life, everyone, life is a balance, trying to find a fine balance between the old and the new. Look around the church for a moment. Okay, just look around. And we realize, everyone, that we need a balance. Okay, we need the old and we need the new when it comes to people. If you have all one side, all new, you miss the wisdom of the old. But if you have all old, then you miss, everyone, the fire that comes from the young. It's a balance. Example I've been given this week is, think about Henry Ford. What if Henry Ford walked into Ford Motor Company, the assembly plant? He would hardly recognize the assembly line that he started years ago. And yet, you know something? It's good. I say to farmers, farms are getting bigger and bigger and bigger. What if you had 3,000 acres, everyone, to plant, and yet you're still stuck with your 4-road planter? Well, you better get out there and you better get planting even in the muck. Okay? We understand it. There's that balance. And even if Henry Ford walked into his plant, he would recognize at least some semblance of his assembly line. The old is there, and is the new. First reading. Here's the debate. First converts are the Jewish people. First converts to Christianity. All of a sudden, when the Gentiles start to believe, the non-believers, everyone, or people who worship different gods, whatever it might be, all of a sudden, some of these Jewish converts to Christianity stepped forward and said, wait a minute, these Gentiles, before they become Christians, have to first of all become Jewish. That's the debate in the first reading of today. So what would happen, everyone, if all of a sudden the early church said, okay, what would it look like for you and I? Here's what it looked like. Number one, forget about eating pork. We realize how pork is so predominant in Martin County. No need to raise it anymore. Can't eat it anyway. All boys circumcised. If you're going to study the Old Testament, can only be done the way the Jewish people do it in Hebrew. So you see what would happen, everyone? If everything all of a sudden just collapsed? Many people would probably say, I'm not going to waste my time with Christianity, and we'd probably be worshiping pagan gods. That's what you hear in the first reading. There's that balance between old and new. Still is relevant today, by the way. Here's the old. Okay? Converts, this is what you're asked to do. Abstain from meat sacrificed to idols. We stay with that today. From blood. From meats of strangled animals. And from unlawful marriage. Still holds today. But there's also that sense of new. In this, it says this, everyone. With renewal being the burden beyond these necessities. Liturgical feasts, circumcision, dietary laws, don't worry about that. This is the old. This is what remains. But it also establishes a balance with the new. It's life's story, everyone. It's life's story. How important is this? Let me explain it to you, everyone. Back in the day when it came to priests, you know something? I've been priest for 21 years. Back in the day, I would have been considered in the middle. Monsignor Coletti, everyone, who's 63, is still considered young in our diocese. 63. See what happens when we lose that balance? What happens? We need the balance, everyone. The old, but we also need the new. It's good for us. It's good for us. Revelation. Let's take some time to look at it again. For those of you not here last week, I talked a little bit about the book of Revelation. So just a quick review of 4 points I made last week. Number one, Death is not about escaping the body. Remember the Platonic view I said? So many people say, I want to die so I can get away from this body. That's not what we understand. Jesus came in a body. He rose in a body. What is the end times about? Jesus transforming the body. Okay? Number 2, the holy city comes down out of heaven. I mentioned this. Again, that Platonic view seems to be, and we kind of mess this up. When we die, we want to get away from this earth and go up and up and up. But I said last week, you go too high, and you're going to go by God who's coming down. That's not what we actually teach. Up away from the earth. God comes down to establish a new heavenly Jerusalem, to renew, to transform all things. Number 3, the new Jerusalem is pictured as a holy city. It's a city. You want to be busy about things, you go to the city. It's where we're fully engaged. I mentioned to you last week, too, I also told you this, people, how we can be busy all the time and never be bored. I can't answer that one. You got to wait to get there for that one. Okay? But that's what it says. Lively and fully engaged. And number 4, remember, ultimately, it teaches us this. Jesus has conquered all things. Principalities, dominions, sin, death, evil, all conquered by Jesus Christ. Okay, now let's look at the symbolism of the 21st chapter of Revelation. Many of you are fascinated, like I said, by Revelation and what it tells us about the end times. What I'm going to go through now is what we hear today. I'm going to talk about the symbolism and what it means. Okay, remember this. Too many times we take things too literally, when many times it's symbolic. So what do we learn just from this chapter? Let's go. Number 1, no one will conquer. Time of Jesus, you built a city. The one thing you built around it, everyone, was a wall. What did you protect it from? Enemies and wild animals. Here's the dimensions of the holy city. All right? Pretend you're a cement, you work with cement. Here's what you have to build. The wall of the heavenly Jerusalem is high, 1,500 miles high. Okay? It spans in a perfect cube 1,500 miles, and the wall is over 200 feet thick. Now, could you imagine if you were working with concrete, how long it would take you to build this? This is the Tower of Babel. They thought they could do it. All of a sudden, what did they start doing? They built, they conflicted, the end of the work. That's what this is about. What does the symbolism mean, everyone? It is impenetrable. Nothing unholy will ever be allowed in the holy city. Nothing. It cannot be destroyed. Number 2, it's massive. How big is this, everyone? Just to give you an idea of length, it is about half the size of the United States. That just shows you how big this is and how many people can be contained in it. Heaven isn't this small cube here. It's massive. Big. That's a symbolism. Number 3, the gates of the city. 3 south, 3 north, 3 west, 3 east. What's the symbolism there? It is open to all people. Whether it be people from the south, Mexico, South America, North, Canada, to the west, everyone. We could think of people from China, Japan, East, Europe. It's open for everybody. All directions. Number 4, its beauty is beyond imagination. Listen to it. The city is pure gold. The clear as glass, with the straits themselves being pure gold. The gates, 12 in all, are each made of, get this, a single pearl. If we find a pearl, everyone, the size of my hand, it gets on the internet. Could you imagine finding a pearl the size of a gate? Awesome. beautiful. Number 5, the city is without a temple. We don't need a worship site. We don't need a church. Why? We are in the presence of God. We see God. 6, it needs no light, for its source of light is God, who is the fullness of light. Isn't that wonderful? You don't have to flick a switch anymore. God is the light. 7th thing, the gates are never shut during the day. Here's what's interesting. And since it is always day, as God is the fullness of light, the gates are never closed. The invitation to all people is open all seasons, all days, over all times. That's the holy city. It's magnificent, everyone. It's awesome. And remember last week, I said the beginning of a book points to the end points to the beginning. It does here too. Remember the beginning, God looked at all He had created, and what did He say? It was very good. Not the end. The end, everyone, is renewed. It is transformed to absolute perfection. Magnificent. It is awesome. And you know what my prayer is? That in God and for God, each of us can experience this holy city eternally. How do we do that? Gospel of today. Keep God's word. So everyone, there's the symbolism, everyone, of Revelation. Just one chapter. The 21st chapter. A lot more to learn. Much more to learn down the road. God's blessings to you.